Why when you euthanize a pet they drift off to sleep death peacefully, but there is so much issues with lethal injection capital punishment on humans. I've heard it's something about pharmaceutical companies not wanting to sell them for use in capital punishment, so prisons end up experimenting with all sorts of unusual concoctions. Euthanasia can also sometimes go wrong. My cat didn't die when he had the first injection. He needed a second one directly into his stomach. It was horrible. Typically, they give the dogs an injection to knock them out, followed by another to stop their heart. And now I get to spend the next few hours missing the 5 I lost. They don't always just drift off to sleep. 2 dogs I had who were in absolute agony drifted off, but one who was riddled with bowel cancer but was not showing signs of pain. He struggled against it and was crying and spazzing out. It was not a quiet or pleasant death, and it honestly made me rethink my stance on euthanasia. Although at the end of the day I am pro-suicide booth. It looks like a combo of many things, ranging from untrained staff to an ability to get the correct drugs. Actual medical doctors swear an oath not to inflict harm, and pharmaceutical companies don't knowingly supply drugs to killers. Prisons just do whatever they want with minimal training and improvised materials. Firstly, as other people said, it is an issue with getting chemicals and what kind of chemicals to use at all. Secondly, animals are euthanized by medical professionals in the US. Basically every association of medical professionals has banned their members from taking part in executions, meaning a lot of the executioners might even struggle with basic tasks like administering a drug. There have been cases where executees had to have numerous injections because they couldn't find the artery, or cases in which they missed the artery, causing the chemicals to not enter the bloodstream, but just sitting around in the issue slowly and painfully making its way to its destination. That second part is a huge reason why lethal injection has a failure rate of around 7. That only being the known cases. Since the lethal injection is typically made up of a paralytic, anesthesia, and a poison. As long as the paralytic works, you will not know if the other ones work as intended, since the executee cannot inform anyone they are still awake. They don't always drift asleep, and the larger the animal the worse it gets. Having seen issues with animals the size of a horse being put to sleep, I'd argue it's more humane to shoot them in the head. Their organs shut down slowly so they can freak out, bite their tongues and bleed out, lock their legs and fall over or run into things, have strokes and go blind, etc. It also takes a much longer amount of time. Small dogs and cats are usually fairly simple, but you size up it takes longer and gets a lot worse. You've never seen a healthy pet euthanized. It's a very different experience, so my vet friend tells me I can't bear it, and it happens at some shelters. Same thing with humans. You're talking about a healthy human being. Aside from that, though, the argument against capital punishment is more about it existing at all, not what method is used. The bitter question to ask is, if it's okay to euthanize an old, sick animal with no chance of recovery, why do we deny humans the same care? Also, anesthesia gone wrong. In surgery, there is one specialized doctor just for the anesthesia, and if they don't do their job right, the patient can go to sleep and never wake up, regardless of the surgeon doing their part properly. I always wondered why they don't just OD on anesthetic as a form of execution. Not that it would matter in my country because we don't have death penalty. Doctors and other medical professionals refuse to take part in executions. Pharmaceutical companies refuse to supply drugs for lethal injections. The current cocktail of drugs used in lethal injections is far from ideal, but it's all the government can get their hands on. There have been attempts to procure drugs for lethal injections without direct permission from the pharmaceutical companies, but these have been met with lawsuits, threats of blacklisting, and some pharmaceutical companies have just stopped manufacturing certain drugs completely to stop them from being used in executions. If all the euthanasia would use nitrogen gas, the animals would actually simply pass out, eventually die from lack of oxygen, but the going unconscious part is pretty fast and definitely not painful. I saw an experiment where a favorite food was put inside a clear plastic box, and the pig knew how to open the lid, but they filled the box with nitrogen. The pig happily ate a few bites, passed out, fell on the floor, head out of the box, lid closed, then woke up very quickly and went back into the box for more food and passed out again. If it were painful or had any bad association, the pig wouldn't go back. It's not a drift into sleep, it's abrupt and jarring. Part of it is that it's not always a doctor implementing to injection for death row inmates. Oftentimes, it's a guard with very limited medical training. They miss the vein, and it ends up being an agonizingly painful and inhumane experience. It's an attempt by the pharmaceutical to appear virtuous and moral. They sometimes don't work that well with dogs either. Happened with one of mine. Was absolutely horrific, and he suffered immensely. Lethal injection is torture and revenge. In industry, nitrogen gas is recognized as a silent, painless killer. There are too many cases where a technician walked into a space that had nitrogen gas in it and slumped to the floor unconscious, then soon dead. If the government truly wanted to unalive a prisoner, a few whiffs of nitrogen and they peacefully would die. Why can't they just put someone under anesthesia then guillotine them? It's not the anesthesia killing them. My cat freaked out while being euthanized, so we can enact do not resuscitate, but basically we think we're not animals because derp. On the same note, mercy killings aren't the same as death penalty, plus sometimes the verdict is wrong. Bit of a hop between old beagle and jury. One of the drugs given to relax the muscles is used in the I have had it, and in the they chase it with saline because it feels like liquid fire in your veins until they flush it. They don't flush it when given for lethal injection. Also, who is going to do it? Medical folks can't because of their oath, so you get someone with almost no training trying to hit a vein. They have failed this before because people are all different. I have to have ifs through my hands because the professionals can't get a vein on me. Why not just run a car exhaust into their mouth? So they just drift asleep like you hear so many people do at night that fail to buy carbon monoxide detectors. They don't always drift off and stop breathing quickly and peacefully. Your experience putting your dog down is not everyone's experience. Also, humans are not dogs. Drugs, among many other things, affect us differently. Because pets are better than people and they deserve to die peacefully. Last week, euthanise did a great overview of the death penalty in America a couple of weeks ago. Might help.